The world is full of little mysteries we rarely think about. Each night, we'll uncover them, slowly, calmly, like a gentle story before sleep. If curiosity soothes you, subscribe and join me on this quiet journey. Tonight, let us begin with a simple question. Why is your thumb so different from all the other fingers? Why is it thicker, shorter, and so much more flexible? When you look down at your hand, you probably don't think about it very much. The thumb simply seems to be there, doing its job, almost invisible in its usefulness. But if you pause for a moment, you will notice that it is unlike any of the other four fingers. It is shorter, sturdier, set at an odd angle, and capable of movements none of the others can perform. Without it, almost everything you do each day, tying your shoelaces, holding a cup, writing a note, or even sending a message on your phone, would suddenly become incredibly difficult. The thumb is what scientists call opposable. That means it can rotate across the palm and touch each of the other fingers, one by one. This simple ability is what allows you to grip, pinch, and manipulate objects with such fine control. Imagine for a moment that your thumb worked like your pinky, thin, weak, and pointing in the same direction as the rest. Your hand would behave more like a flat clamp. You might be able to hold large objects. But the delicate skills, writing, sewing, unlocking a door, or turning a tiny screw, would be almost impossible. Why did the thumb become this way? Anthropologists trace it back millions of years, to the long journey of human evolution. Early human ancestors, like Homo habilis and Homo erectus, began shaping stones into tools, carving sharp edges for cutting, or attaching points to sticks to make spears. These tasks demanded precision and strength, and so, generation after generation, individuals with stronger, more flexible thumbs had an advantage. They could craft better tools, hunt more effectively, and survive more easily. Over time, the thumb grew thicker, its muscles stronger, its range of motion wider. What you carry today in your hand is the result of that long, silent process of natural selection. You can notice the importance of the thumb in countless everyday actions. Think about opening a bottle of water. You twist the cap between your fingers, but it is your thumb that pushes and drives the motion. When you tie your shoes, the thumb works with the index finger to create loops and tighten knots. And when you type a message on your phone, it is often the thumbs that tap across the screen, moving quickly and accurately. The thumb is not just a physical tool, it is also a cultural symbol. In ancient Rome, the position of a person's thumb in the arena could mean life or death for a gladiator. Today, a raised thumb has become a universal sign of approval, a quick gesture of encouragement, or a symbol of like in the digital age. Across languages, the thumb appears again and again in idioms and expressions. The English phrase rule of thumb comes from a time when the thumb was often used as a rough measuring tool, reliable enough for daily life. If you watch a child learning to hold a pencil, you will see how important the thumb truly is. Adults guide the little hand, placing the thumb and index finger carefully, because together they form the foundation for control. In developmental psychology, the ability to use the thumb skillfully is one of the milestones that shows a child's fine motor skills are maturing. Even the brain itself reflects the thumb's significance. On the motor cortex, the area that controls movement, the thumb takes up a disproportionately large space. Your brain dedicates more resources to guiding the thumb than almost any other part of the hand. That is why even small injuries to the thumb can feel disabling. If you try to go about your day without using it, say you bandage it tightly and keep it against your palm, you will quickly realize how many tasks suddenly become clumsy, awkward, or simply impossible. Biologists also compare the human thumb to those of other primates. Chimpanzees and gorillas do have thumbs, but they are shorter and less flexible, designed more for climbing and grasping branches than for delicate tool-making. This difference, small as it may seem, is one of the defining traits that separate humans from other primates. It is the reason we can play instruments, write books, and build machines, while our closest relatives cannot. So, why is the thumb bigger and more flexible than the other fingers? Because evolution shaped it to be the cornerstone of human dexterity. It became the anchor of the hand, the silent partner that works with every other finger to create strength, precision, and control. It is what makes your hand not just a tool for grabbing, but a tool for creating. Try an experiment right now. Fold your thumb into your palm, hide it away, and then try to pick up a pen with the remaining 4 fingers. You will notice how unstable it feels, how the pen slips and wobbles. Then, let the thumb return, and suddenly the grip becomes firm, the motion smooth. The difference is undeniable. The thumb may not be the longest finger, or the most elegant to look at, but it is the reason your hand is the masterpiece of biology that it is. It has carried you through millions of years of history, and it continues, every day, to quietly enable the simplest acts of your life. So the next time you send a quick text, give someone a thumbs up, or simply hold a cup of tea before bed. Remember, your thumb is not just another finger. It is a symbol of what it means to be human. Now, let's gently explore another question. Why do clocks move in the direction we call clockwise? At first glance, this might seem obvious. We see clocks everywhere, and the hands simply move around the dial in the same direction we are used to. But have you ever paused and wondered, why that direction? Why not the opposite? Or even alternating directions? The answer takes us on a quiet journey through time, shadows, and human invention. To understand this, we must start far back, long before mechanical clocks existed. Many centuries ago, humans relied on the sun to measure time. Sundials were the earliest clocks, casting shadows onto engraved surfaces to indicate the hour. If you imagine yourself standing in the northern hemisphere, where most of these early sundials were designed, the sun rises in the east, moves across the southern sky, and sets in the west. The shadows cast by a vertical stick, called a gnomon, sweep across the face of the sundial in a particular pattern from left to right, moving downward as the day progresses. That natural movement of shadows became ingrained in human perception. People became accustomed to the passage of time flowing in that direction, because every day, for thousands of years, that was what they observed. When mechanical clocks were invented in Europe in the 14th century, the clockmakers naturally mimicked the motion of the sundial's shadow. The hands of the clock were set to move in the same direction, the pattern we now call clockwise. But there is more to it than habit. There is also a practical consideration. Most early clockmakers were right-handed, as are most people. Designing the clock so that the hands moved in the same direction that a right-handed person would naturally turn a screw or wind a mechanism made construction easier. Imagine winding the clock with your right hand. The direction that the key turned to tighten the mechanism matched the forward motion of the hands. Over time, this became standardized, and any clock built afterward simply followed the same pattern. Interestingly, if you imagine the sundial in the southern hemisphere, the shadows actually move in the opposite direction. Some early attempts at timekeeping there could have logically led to counterclockwise clocks. But as mechanical clocks spread globally from Europe, the clockwise standard prevailed. And we all inherited this convention. The term clockwise itself only came into common use much later, as language evolved to describe this familiar motion. Before that, people described time more by the rising and setting of the sun, the movements of shadows, or the phases of the moon. The idea that hands of a clock move in a particular direction became so deeply ingrained that it now feels entirely natural, though, in reality, it is an arbitrary standard rooted in history and human habit. Let's consider a few examples of how this directionality influenced design. In some traditional watches and clocks, the gears and cogs are all built to support clockwise motion. Even today, when engineers design mechanical systems, the forward movement is almost always clockwise. Try to imagine a clock running counterclockwise. At first, it might feel disorienting. The brain, trained by centuries of seeing the hands move in a particular way, needs time to adjust. that shows just how deeply this pattern has become embedded in human cognition. Clockwise motion also affects cultural and symbolic interpretations. In many cultures, the direction in which time flows, rituals are performed, or even dances are executed often follows a rightward or clockwise pattern. From wedding processions to ceremonial marches, humans seem to favor moving in this direction, echoing the same flow observed in sundials. Perhaps it is the same subtle influence that made clockwise time feel natural to the human mind. Interestingly, there are a few clocks that run counterclockwise. Some are designed for novelty, some for cultural reasons. But these are exceptions that make the rule more visible. The clockwise standard dominates because it is both a habit and a product of practical design. Once the convention was established, changing it would create confusion. Imagine telling someone that 9 o'clock is now where 3 o'clock used to be. Daily life would become unnecessarily complicated. Even digital clocks, which do not have physical hands, are still based on the same conventions. The layout of numbers, the orientation of minute and hour positions, all trace back to the clockwise pattern inherited from sundials and early European mechanical clocks. So whether you look at a classic grandfather clock or the face of your phone, you are experiencing centuries of human history and reasoning condensed into a simple motion. So, the next time you watch the hands of a clock slowly make their journey around the face, you can imagine the long path that led to this seemingly obvious pattern. It is a story that begins with shadows, continues through the skillful hands of right-handed clockmakers, and persists because it simply works and feels natural. Clockwise is a quiet rhythm, a steady march of time that connects us to the sunlit days of our ancestors, and as your eyes follow the second-hand sweep gently around the dial, you may notice a kind of calm in its movement. It reminds you that time, even when measured with precision, is also something simple and enduring, like a slow, quiet story before sleep. Now, let's quietly explore another question. Why are the letters in the alphabet arranged in the order we know today? It's one of those things we rarely think about, yet it surrounds us every day. A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. The sequence is so familiar that we recite it almost automatically as children, and then take it for granted as adults. But have you ever paused and wondered why the letters appear in this particular order? Why not a different sequence entirely? The story takes us back thousands of years, across civilizations, and through the slow evolution of human writing. The alphabet we use today has its roots in ancient scripts, more than 3,000 years ago, in the region we now call the Middle East. Early Semitic-speaking peoples created a simple set of symbols to represent the sounds of their language. These symbols were inspired by everyday objects, like the head of an ox, a house, or a hand. Each symbol had a name, often corresponding to the object it represented. Interestingly, the order of these early letters, let's call them the Proto-Canaanite or early Semitic alphabet, was already largely fixed. They were passed down orally as a sequence, almost like a song or chant. Children learned the letters in a particular order, which made memorization easier. Imagine learning a list of symbols. The rhythm of repetition helps the mind retain the information. This early ordering, handed down from teacher to student over generations, is the direct ancestor of our modern A to Z. The Greeks borrowed this alphabet from the Phoenicians around the 8th century BCE. They adapted some symbols to suit their own language, introducing vowels where the Phoenician alphabet had only consonants. Remarkably, they kept the original order of letters. The order was familiar and functional. It made teaching, copying texts, and organizing knowledge far easier. By the time the Greeks passed the alphabet to the Romans, the sequence was largely unchanged, and so, the order that we recite today is more than 3,000 years old. But why did no one rearrange the letters over time? Partly, it's a matter of practicality. Writing systems are tools. Once a system is established and widely used, changing it becomes enormously complicated. Imagine trying to reorder letters, dictionaries, lists, inscriptions. and records would all need to be rewritten. The human mind, fond of patterns, prefers stability. So the original sequence persisted, quietly, through centuries of writing and teaching. Think of the alphabet as a musical scale. Each note has a pitch and a place. Each letter has a sound and a position. Changing the order would disrupt the flow, the rhythm of learning. In fact, educators have long relied on the sequence to teach literacy. Alphabet songs, flashcards, and even spelling exercises are built around this fixed order. The sequence became a scaffold for learning, a simple but powerful framework to navigate language. There is also evidence that the sequence had symbolic and mnemonic value. Each letter, in ancient times, was associated with an object or a concept. Memorizing the sequence helped people remember not only the letters themselves, but also the sounds, shapes, and even the meanings behind them. Over time, as writing became more abstract and detached from images, the order still remained as a tradition, a quiet thread connecting us to our linguistic ancestors. Even in the digital age, when letters appear on keyboards, phones, and screens, the underlying sequence influences us. Dictionaries, encyclopedias, indexes, and filing systems are organized based on the fixed A to Z order. It is so ingrained that we rarely question it. And yet, every time you see a familiar sequence, A, B, C, you are participating in a tradition that stretches back thousands of years across continents and cultures. Let's try a small experiment. Close your eyes and slowly recite the alphabet in order. Notice how automatic it feels. Your mind effortlessly moves from one letter to the next, as though guided by a quiet, invisible hand. That hand is history itself, the echo of ancient teachers, scribes, and learners who kept the sequence alive because it worked, because it made learning and communication possible. The order of letters is also a reminder of the continuity of human knowledge, even when languages, empires, and technologies have changed. This simple sequence has persisted, from stone inscriptions in the Phoenician desert to the pages of modern novels, from clay tablets in ancient Greece to the keyboards of your phone. The same rhythm flows. A, B, C, D. Each letter a link in a chain that connects generations across time. So why are the letters in the alphabet in the order we know today? Because of tradition, practicality, and the quiet wisdom of generations who taught and learned before us. It is a system designed to be learned, remembered, and passed down. It is a story of continuity and human ingenuity, quietly shaping the way we read, write, and think. And as you gently move through the familiar sequence in your mind, it is easy to appreciate the rhythm and the pattern, the calm, ordered flow of language that has traveled thousands of years to rest in your hands tonight. Now, let's gently explore another question. Why do we yawn, and why is it so contagious? Yawning is one of the simplest human behaviors, and yet it is full of mystery. We do it countless times without thinking. Sometimes when we are tired, sometimes when we see someone else do it. It's almost impossible to resist. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine watching someone yawn. Do you feel a tickle in the back of your own throat? That is the contagious nature of yawning at work, quietly pulling you into the rhythm of another person's body. At its core, a yawn is a deep inhalation of air, followed by a slow exhalation. The jaw stretches wide, the lungs fill, and for a few seconds, the body seems to pause. Scientists have studied this simple act for decades, and although there are still mysteries, several explanations have emerged. One of the main reasons humans yawn is to regulate the brain's temperature and maintain alertness. When you are tired, drowsy, or bored, your brain begins to cool itself through the process of yawning. The deep intake of air helps adjust oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, while stretching the jaw and opening the mouth increases blood flow to the brain, almost like gently rebooting its systems. Yawning also helps reset the nervous system. Think of it as a gentle pause, a small reset button that gives the body a brief moment of calm and alertness. When you yawn before sleep or during a quiet moment of reflection, your body is subtly preparing itself for a shift, either into rest or into renewed focus. It is a simple, elegant mechanism that humans have carried for millions of years. But what about the contagious nature of yawning? This is where it becomes even more fascinating. Scientists have discovered that yawning is strongly linked to social bonding and empathy. When you see someone yawn, mirror neurons in your brain, specialized cells that respond to the actions of others, activate, and you are inclined to yawn in response. This phenomenon is not unique to humans. Some animals, such as chimpanzees, dogs, and even birds, exhibit contagious yawning, usually within social groups. It is a subtle form of communication, a nonverbal signal that creates synchronization among members of a group. Consider this. When a group of people spends time together, contagious yawning may serve to align alertness levels, helping everyone become attentive or ready for rest at roughly the same time. In a way, it is a quiet, biological form of empathy and connection. By mirroring another person's yawn, you are engaging in a tiny, unconscious act of social cohesion. Your body is saying, without words, I notice you, I feel with you, I am part of this rhythm. Interestingly, not everyone is equally susceptible. Children younger than 4 rarely catch yawns from others, perhaps because their capacity for empathy and social connection is still developing. Adults with higher levels of social attunement, on the other hand, yawn more easily in response to others. Even imagining someone yawning, reading about yawns, or hearing about them can trigger the same response. This shows just how deeply the phenomenon is wired into both body and mind. There are also cultural and environmental observations that enhance this story. Yawning is more common in quiet, relaxed settings, early morning or late evening, in calm rooms, or during long periods of inactivity. It is also more noticeable when people are closely connected. Have you ever noticed that yawns spread faster among friends and family than strangers? It is as if the body prioritizes empathy for those with whom it shares a deeper bond. From a physiological perspective, the mechanics of a yawn are quite elegant. The tongue stretches, the lungs inflate, the diaphragm moves in a gentle wave, and the heart rate slightly increases for a brief moment. Blood vessels expand, allowing fresh oxygen to circulate. Every part of this simple gesture is coordinated, almost choreographed, to refresh the body and mind. In its own way, a yawn is a miniature ritual of self-care, repeated millions of times across humanity. And yet, despite all this understanding, there remains a sense of mystery. Why does the act feel irresistibly contagious? Why does seeing, hearing, or even thinking about a yawn trigger the same action in your body? Scientists continue to explore this. But part of the beauty of yawning may be that it cannot be entirely explained. It is one of those subtle, intimate behaviors that connects all living beings in quiet, invisible ways. So the next time you feel a yawn rising, and notice it spreading from someone else, remember, it is not just a simple reflex. It is a gentle dance between body, brain, and social connection. It cools your mind, aligns your rhythms with others, and subtly reminds you that, in small ways, you are always part of a shared experience. In the calm stillness of your own room, as you listen to this story, you might find yourself yawning too. Let it happen. Allow it to flow. In that simple act, your body is performing an age-old ritual, quietly, gracefully, and in perfect harmony with the rhythms of life. Now, let's quietly explore another question. Why do we get goosebumps? When we feel cold, or when we are suddenly scared? If you've ever shivered on a chilly morning, or felt a sudden thrill of fear, you've likely noticed your skin reacting in tiny, subtle ways. The hairs on your arms or neck stand upright, forming little bumps. In science, this phenomenon is called piloerection, but most people simply call it goosebumps. It is one of those small, everyday mysteries that quietly reveals the hidden intelligence of the human body. To understand why this happens, we must journey back into the distant past, long before humans lived in warm houses or wore thick clothing. Our ancestors, like all mammals, faced harsh environments. Cold winds, rain, and sudden threats were constant challenges. Goosebumps were nature's clever solution. Each hair standing upright traps a thin layer of air close to the skin, adding insulation. In a time before woolen coats or modern heating, this simple reflex helped retain warmth, keeping early humans a little safer against the cold. The mechanism is elegant. Tiny muscles at the base of each hair, called erector pili muscles, contract involuntarily when triggered. When you feel a drop in temperature, the nervous system senses the change and sends a signal. Muscles tighten, hairs rise, and goosebumps appear almost like magic. The process is automatic, beyond conscious control, a quiet reminder that the body is constantly working to protect you. But goosebumps are not only about cold, they also appear in moments of fear, surprise, or awe. Imagine watching a suspenseful scene in a movie, or hearing a sudden, haunting sound in a quiet room. Your body responds with the same tiny reflex. Why? Because, for our ancestors, fear often signaled danger. Making the hairs stand on end made their small frames look larger to potential predators, a visual signal of threat. Even though we may not face saber-toothed cats today, our bodies still carry this ancient response, quietly activating at the hint of fear or excitement. Interestingly, goosebumps also accompany moments of deep emotional experience. Music that moves you, a story that thrills, or a breathtaking view can trigger a sudden shiver, leaving the skin dotted with tiny bumps. Scientists believe this is connected to the release of adrenaline, the body's alert hormone. Adrenaline primes you to respond to change, whether it is cold, danger, or wonder, by subtly altering your body's state. Goosebumps are one visible sign of that internal preparation, a small, silent communication between mind and body. From a neurological perspective, the reflex is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, the part of your body that operates in the background. You don't consciously decide to get goosebumps. They happen because your body is monitoring your environment, temperature, and emotional state, and responding accordingly. It is a tiny miracle of coordination. The brain sends the signal. Muscles contract, hairs rise, and a physical effect appears on your skin. All of this occurs in a fraction of a second. Goosebumps also remind us of our connection to the animal kingdom. Many mammals exhibit the same response. Cats arch their backs and puff up their fur when threatened. Dogs do the same to appear larger. Humans, while mostly hairless, still carry this ancestral trait. It is one of the quiet reminders that we are products of evolution, that our bodies are finely tuned instruments shaped over millions of years. Even in modern life, goosebumps play subtle roles. They can signal to others that something startling has happened, or that you are emotionally moved. They are a visual expression of inner states, a bridge between the body and the outside world. You might notice them on a friend watching a movie, or even on yourself while listening to a story. They connect us to sensations and experiences beyond conscious thought. The next time you feel a sudden shiver on your arm, or notice your skin rising in tiny bumps, take a moment to appreciate it. This small reflex carries stories of ancient survival, of shivering ancestors seeking warmth, and alert humans facing danger. It is a whisper of evolution, a subtle message from your body that it is alive, aware, and quietly working to protect and prepare you. And as you lie in bed tonight, listening to this story, perhaps you will notice a faint shiver, a gentle prickling on your skin. Let it pass. Feel it as a reminder that even the smallest details of your body carry deep wisdom, shaped over millennia, always ready to respond with care. Goosebumps are nature's quiet touch, a reminder that your body is alive, responsive, and intricately connected to the world around you.